Francis Bacon's influence on the modern world cannot be overstated, yet his name has little household recognition. This man, who was the right hand to King James, ushered in the modern technological world with his scientific method, played a major role in the establishment of the New World and the United States, was the final editor of the King James Bible, was possibly the true author of the works of Shakespeare, was a significant influence on modern Freemasonry, and Bacon was also the Grand Master of the Rosicrucians. In addition to being a regular, albeit highly productive individual, he is also, to some, much more than a human being. Some have reached the conclusion that Bacon was, or is, an ascended master, one who has transcended the limitations of physical form. Regardless of what or whom he was, his presence is felt very much to this day. As expressed in the presentation, The Secret on the Susquehanna, Bacon's fingerprints are all over the John Smith map of Virginia. Hiding within the map, which was published in 1612, is an encoded, secret location: the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. This location, when taken as literally as possible, aligns to modern-day Lancaster County. The idea that Bacon and the Rosicrucians were interested in the land now known as Lancaster is further supported by the fact that the first permanent Rosicrucian colony in the New World, the Ephrata Cloister, is also located in Lancaster County, about 20 miles from the spot identified in the John Smith map. The point is that Bacon, this man of great influence on the modern world, was very interested in Lancaster County. Nowhere does he or any other Rosicrucian openly state why this land is so significant. All that can be done is to study the actions by the Rosicrucians and look at the results. As it has been said, you will know a tree by the fruit which it produces. We now go one layer deeper. This presentation demonstrates how the plan for Lancaster City itself meets the criteria of being an alchemical ritual site. On top of that, the precise location of the ritual site, which we will get to in a moment, happens to be the same spot where the seed of the Rosicrucian dream was planted. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. After Bacon's death in 1626, Bacon's utopian novel, The New Atlantis, was released. Though unfinished, its premise is that of a utopian land where, and I quote, generosity and enlightenment, dignity and splendor, piety and public spirit are the commonly held qualities of the inhabitants. Creating the New Atlantis was the Rosicrucian dream, or at least an aspect to it. As Grand Master, Bacon was the guiding force of the Rosicrucians. The New Atlantis is not just a story, but a commanding order and a blueprint for constructing the Rosicrucian dream. The founding fathers of the United States followed their directive. Consider what Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence and third United States President, had to say. Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, and John Locke are the three greatest men the world has ever produced. Note that all three of these men were also members of the Rosicrucian fraternity. Bacon played a leading role in the establishment of the New World via his position on the Executive Council of the Virginia Company of London. The Virginia Company was the for-profit organization behind Jamestown and the Plymouth Settlement. John Smith was the leader of the Jamestown settlement, and this provides the link between Francis Bacon and the John Smith map. So not only did Bacon influence the founding fathers via his written word, but he also got the ball rolling of the entire colonization scheme. In 1616, 10 years before the New Atlantis was published, the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosencreutz was released, arguably the most significant Rosicrucian document of the era. The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosencreutz is Rosicrucian allegory that tells the story of the union of the primordial opposites, whether called yin and yang, goddess and god, moon and sun, water and fire, or king and queen. On the individual level, it can also refer to the merging of body and spirit, or mind and heart. This esoteric concept, the balancing and merging of opposites, goes by many names, including the alchemical wedding, the sacred marriage, or hieros gamos. The exact meaning of the phrase alchemical wedding can vary based upon context. In the most literal sense, as the sacred marriage, it refers to the ritualistic sexual union of the actual king and queen, or a male and female representing the king and queen. This was seen as a fertility rite, but the higher truth is the alchemical wedding is a ritual to bring about balance and manifestation in any form, via blending the two opposites, male and female. A third is created. The king and queen would participate in the act to the benefit of their kingdom. The goal was not necessarily to impregnate the queen, as much as it was to bring about new life and/or abundance. The blending of opposites is always first about balance and then ultimately about manifestation, bringing something new into the world, which can be either physical or non-material. And the Rosicrucian document, the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosencreutz, is an instruction manual. Now let's take a moment to recap. In the Rosicrucian-influenced 1612 map of Virginia, the location, now known as Lancaster, was cryptically identified. Then, in 1694, the New World's first Rosicrucian Grand Master arrived in Philadelphia and set up a temporary Rosicrucian colony. In 1730, the first permanent Rosicrucian colony in the New World was established in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The location of the Ephrata Cloister is 20 miles from the exact location the John Smith map identified, the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. The presentations, The Secret on the Susquehanna and Mystic Lancaster Part 1, cover these topics in depthly. In 1734, the Lancaster City Plan was laid out by James Hamilton. Lancaster City is approximately midway between the cloister and the location encrypted in the John Smith map. It was well documented that Hamilton was a Freemason, but it is also very likely he was a Rosicrucian as well. We know this because he served in a leadership capacity for two institutions founded by known Rosicrucian Benjamin Franklin. Specifically, he was the head of Franklin's American Philosophical Society. Lancaster City was laid out in the shape of a square. Now here is where it gets interesting. But first, this needs to be defined. Ritual is a human being acting out symbolism in order to invoke a specific quality. But whatever the ritual is attempting to invoke, it can also be expressed through inanimate symbolism. The center of Lancaster City was laid out in such a way that it is a representation of the Rosicrucian chemical wedding, or esoteric concept of the sacred marriage. Let's see how. First, look at the square. At the heart of any shape is the center. The simple rules of geometry tells us that the center of a square is identified by connecting the opposing corners. So let's do that. Look closely and see the exact center of the city is the intersection of King and Queen Streets. In the most literal sense, the union of King and Queen Streets is an inanimate symbol of the sacred marriage, the union of two opposites. So if Lancaster City, located in the heart of the land identified by the Rosicrucian Grand Master Francis Bacon, was laid out to bring about manifestation, then what was it to manifest? The Rosicrucian utopia of the New Atlantis. It's been said that talk is cheap, so let's see if these words hold water. In the summer of 1744, 12 years after Beisel established the Ephrata cloister, but decades before the birth of the United States of America, a conference took place at the old courthouse in Lancaster, which ran from June 22nd to July 4th. The primary participants were the governors of the Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia colonies, and the head of the Iroquois nation. The purpose of the conference was a renegotiation of an earlier treaty, but that is not what we are interested in here. We are interested in an idea that was publicly spoken for the first time. To quote the Rosicrucian-influenced King James Bible, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Said another way, everything begins with words, and words have the power to manifest. The conference, which is known as the 1744 Treaty of Lancaster, is best remembered for the advice given by Kanasatego, spokesman for the Iroquois nation. This is what he had to say. "We have one thing further to say, and that is we heartily recommend union and a good agreement between you, our brethren. Never disagree, but preserve a strict friendship for another, and thereby you, as well as we, become the stronger. For our wise forefathers established union and amity between the 5 nations. This has made us formidable. This has given us great weight and authority with our neighboring nations. We are a powerful confederacy, and by your observing the same methods our wise forefathers have taken, you will acquire fresh strength and power. Therefore, whatever befalls you, never fall out with one another." These words describe the model that would eventually be followed by the founding fathers in creating the United States of America, a confederacy of independent states unified via a central structure. The Rosicrucian dream of the New Atlantis took a giant step forward. And there is more. Canasatego didn't speak English. He had an interpreter. His interpreter's name was Conrad Weiser. And who was Weiser? A prominent Rosicrucian with direct links to the Ephrata cloister. It was from the mouth of a Rosicrucian who spoke the words and planted the seeds in the minds of prominent men that moved the Rosicrucian dream one giant step further to becoming manifest. And where did he say these words? Where in Lancaster City is the old courthouse located? At the intersection of King and Queen Streets, at the site of the alchemical wedding, a location endowed with the purpose of manifestation. It was here that the seed of the great American experiment was planted. And it goes deeper still. When Weiser translated Canasatego's words, only those in the sanctum of the courthouse were privy to hear. But there was another Rosicrucian in attendance, and he owned a print shop in Philadelphia and took the treaty and the conference minutes, including the advice from the Iroquois nation, and put it in pamphlet form, then propagated the idea into the minds of men and women throughout the colonies. And this other Rosicrucian? Benjamin Franklin. Obviously, the seed planted eventually took root, but it actually took root right at the alchemical wedding site. On September 27th, 1777, for one day, and one day only, Lancaster City housed Congress and was the acting capital of the United States of America. Congress is the branch of government that best represents the idea that was presented at the treaty by the Iroquois nation. And then, in the same building, in the same room, those words were said. They became manifest. Let us return to Francis Bacon for a moment. Bacon was many things, including an expert code maker and steganographer. The name Bacon in simple cipher is 33. Bacon used 33 and TT, the initials of 33, as his calling cards. So the seed planted at the Treaty of Lancaster eventually took root in the same physical location, with only time separating the events. And what was the time difference between the two events? Exactly 33 years, 3 months, and 3 days. Bacon's presence, whether conscious or not, is tied to this location. And this link goes even deeper. In 1594, over the 12 days of Christmas, Bacon and his cohorts put on a play, though veiled Rosicrucian ritual may be a more accurate description, at Gray's Inn, the prestigious club for London barristers. The title of the play was The Prince of Purple and the Honorable Order of the Knights of the Helmet. In it, Francis Bacon presented his philosophical ideals and an order of knighthood dedicated to carrying them out. The individual this philosophical order of knights had sworn to protect was the divine spear shaker, Pallas Athena. So who is Pallas Athena? The Greek goddess which Athens is named for. She is also known as the Liberty Goddess, for she represents the feminine warrior who fights for freedom from tyranny of enslavement in all its forms. The point here is to highlight Bacon's connection to the general concept of goddess worship, and specifically to his role as the guardian of the Liberty Goddess and what she represents. Please keep in mind that the Liberty Goddess is an inanimate symbol representing the quality of becoming free. This topic and how it connects to the Rosicrucians, the John Smith map, and the Susquehanna River is covered in the presentation, The Goddess Susquehanna, the Ancient River as the Rosicrucian High Altar. But for now, let's return to Lancaster City. On July 4th, 1874, a Civil War monument was dedicated at the intersection of King and Queen Street. Mind you, this occurred exactly 130 years to the day of the conclusion of the Treaty of Lancaster, which occurred at the exact location. The monument is 13 meters high and consists of a statue on top of a pillar. The statue is of a robed woman with sword and shield. And the name of the statue? The Genius of Liberty. The figure on top of the monument is a Liberty Goddess, just as Pallas Athena. Let that sink in for a moment. The Order of the Knights of the Helmet marked their territory with the Liberty Goddess at the site of the alchemical wedding where the seed of the Rosicrucian dream was first planted, in the most fertile soil in all the land.